at putting in locations into the admin side of ARMS. So for this, we're going to access our admin portal, same way we have previously, modifying crime codes, adding in users, everything else. But we're going to take a look this time at actually setting up new locations and how to update and maintain your current locations in the system. And here we are. So to access the GeoFile, I'm going to come into my setup menu, come down to GeoFile. Now you'll notice in this section with GeoFile, I have other location specific fields with it. So GeoFile is where I'm going to be doing the most of the work here. But I have separate files here for beat, site, street name, and phone number. So this is where I can set up some of these other bits of information that I'm going to use within my GeoFile. So for example, if I wanted to add in a new beat, I would do that from the beat menu. If I wanted to add in a new site, I would do that from the site menu, street name from the street name menu, so on. So these are just the extra bits of information that you'll get put in first, and then you can use those fields in your GeoFile when you're updating and maintaining your locations. Now, inside of my actual GeoFile here, you'll notice I have a pretty standard setup. I have some basic information about my location. This is going to be somewhat useful in your reporting. There's going to be some Clery reporting aspects here, some UCR reporting here. But for the most part, this is just going to decide how a lot of this information gets pre-filled for the users. So let's kind of start at the top here and we'll work our way down. The very top here we have inactive. That one, if I mark that, if I check that in the system as inactive, that's me saying that I don't want to use this location in the future anymore, but I don't want to delete it because once again, I don't want to leave a hole in my data somewhere where this code was used at some point. If I keep looking down below there, I have site, so I can organize all of my locations into sites. If I have multiple campuses, each campus could be their own site. If my jurisdiction crosses a couple different cities, I can have different cities be my sites. If I cross states, I can have one state be one site, one state be another site. You can set these up and customize these in that site file we looked at earlier. Next to that, we have beat. Same thing that we were talking about a second ago. With my beats, I can organize my locations into sort of subgroups. So think of sites as being your locations organized on different campuses, but then within that one campus, you may have 2 or 3 beats. And you can set up those beats as well in the system. Now, the beats can have an active ability to them as well. You can dispatch by beat in ARMS. So if you do want to set up your beats that way, you can set it up to where if an officer is assigned to a beat, they will also be pre-assigned to calls that occur within that beat. Something to keep in mind if you want to use that. As we move down below there, we have our location code. Much like our crime code earlier, this is just our shorthand quick entry data method here. So rather than having to actually type out Jason Worth Middle School every single time, I can just type out JWMS, hit tab, and all the rest of this information will auto-complete out on the screen for me. Next to that, common name. It's just going to be exactly the long written out version of this name. So whenever you print out a report, what's the common name that you want to appear on that report that you're printing? Location type, we have another one of these list fields, so we can come through here, put in a question mark, hit tab, and that'll give me all the different location types. These are just like campus classifications with the crime codes earlier. So we can use these to group our locations by type and then run reports on that later. Now, some of these are specific to the reporting mechanism you're using. So NIBRS location type has its own field. So if I'm reporting NIBRS, I want to make sure I assigned a NIBRS location type to all my locations. Helps speeds along everything. My address information, address number, my street name, notice that is a list value. Once again, you can't just freehand type a street into the street name field here. You would have to add it into street name first, and then you'll be able to select it from here if you don't have access to it already. Same thing with suite number, floor, city. All this information is going to be preloaded into your CAD calls, into your case reports as soon as the users click on them. Then finally down here at the bottom we have emails, web address, longitude and latitude. This is used for mapping. If I wanted to, I could just click on the map button here to do that as well. If I don't know my longitude and latitudes, and who really does, we could put that information into there as well. We move over a little bit here. You'll notice I have display list in, and I can pick whether or not it's all list. If I'm using parking, I can specify if this is a parking only location or an arms only location. Next to that, I can also put in an alias. So let's say you have a building on a campus and it changes names. You can put the old name in as an alias, and that way if somebody types it in, maybe they're forgetful, it'll automatically autocorrect it to the new name, the name that you actually have over here. So you can set up as many of these aliases as you want. Works well for buildings that change names, buildings that have multiple names, anything like that. You can put those in as aliases, and that'll help keep all that tidy for you. You can also assign your location officer safety notices and security matrix entries. So officer safety notices, like the example I have here is guard dog. You can add in as many of these as you want, and when you add them in, they will automatically beep and flash and alert the users whenever they interact with that location. So for example, if I put in a CAD call for Jason Worth Middle School, it's going to automatically beep and flash and alert me that there's a guard dog at that location. Down below there, we have the security matrix. Think of these like sub-locations within this building. So if I'm looking at Jason Worth Middle School as an example here, within this building, I may have card access doors, I may have video camera locations, I may have fire doors, anything like that, any sort of AED locations that I want to keep track of. I can come in here and actually add in the information for those sub-locations, keeping track of the access number to get into it, keeping track of the phone number to call in case it breaks, keeping track of when was the last time it was service checked. So I can put all that information in here so that whenever I pull this location up in CAD or in case management, my users will be able to see and review all that information in the system as well. Now I do have other tabs of information across the top here. So you'll notice I have miscellaneous and hazmat data. This is where you can make your Clery location definition. So if this was an on-campus location, I can leave that box marked. Or if I want to change this to a res facility, non-campus building, non-reportable public property, I can mark all that down here. Even gives you a little definition below each one to kind of help you out. And then I also can put in hazmat information here as well. So when I come in, right click, hit add, I can tag in any sort of hazmat information. Same thing like an officer safety alert. It's going to beep, it's going to flash, it's going to alert to let me know there's some sort of a problem with this location. Skip over here to blueprints. So I can come in here and I can store as many image files as I want to in my location. Once again, just giving more information to the dispatcher while they're dispatching that call. Same thing with contact information. I can save as many phone numbers and names and address information to the location so that whenever the dispatcher pulls up a location, they don't have to go flip open a folder or open up another program to get the contact name for the director of that building, for example, or the owner of that building. They'll have the phone number and all their information sitting right here. As soon as they open up that call, they'll be able to pull that information. And then finally here, for anything that doesn't fit any of those other categories that we looked at so far, the location description is basically just a text box. So if it doesn't fit in any of those other buckets of data that we've kind of looked at so far, you can come in here underneath location description and actually type in any sort of extra information you want to store.